97 FM, the Bahamas. And on the World Wide Web at www.love97fm.com.
Sitting in the morning sun, I'll be sitting when the evening comes.
Maritime Matters is brought to you live by Bahamas Maritime Connection.
What is maritime?
Maritime, simply put, relates to navigation or commerce on the high seas.
Some say money makes the world go round. I say ships move the money that make the world move.
Who navigates those large international ships?
How often are international ships required to be surveyed and inspected?
Maritime also protects our seas and borders by way of our local Bahamas Defense
It
Force.
is very sad to say that out of 1,500 plus ships that are registered under the Bahamian flag, only a very small amount of Bahamians are employed.
Maritime Matters.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Pleasant good evening to you, our valued listening audience. Welcome one, welcome all. Welcome to Maritime Matters. I am your host, Captain Glenn Bain, and this is Tuesday, the 16th day of July, 2024. And if it's a Tuesday, you know the deal. It's Maritime Matters. Yeah. Our sponsors for the night show are Waterman Pharmacy, also Island Care Pharmacy. For all your medication needs, check with my little cousin Shantia Heald McBride and her lovely team at 101 Pharmacy in Nassau, and of course Island Care Pharmacy up there in Freeport. Fill your prescription at the store or send your refills via the online site, 1on1pharmacy.com. That's 1on1pharmacy, all lowercase, one word.com. The three locations are East Street South, Charles Sanders Highway, and of course Freeport Explorers Way. We are secondly sponsored by Bahamas Maritime Connection Limited. That's BMC, that's us people. We provide a full suite of ISPS maritime security services. I'd like to say good night to my Auntie May up there in Freeport. My Auntie May, 91 years old and going strong, people. She had a little cold last week. She didn't know what it was, a little fluish, little operation. But she done kicked that down and Auntie May moves on. That's my good old Auntie May. It is my pleasure, dear listeners, to introduce you to the man behind the controls for the show tonight. We have Mr. Wonderful. I present to you tonight the insatiable, the man of the hour, the man with all the power. He is fully able, people, quite capable. The one and only Mr. Kishno Jones. Yes, and he comes out and he steps out and he throws those hands and then he's throwing blows. Kishno is ready for power tonight. Ready for power, people, and he's going to give us that power. You're listening to Maritime Matters, and on this show, we talk maritime. Maritime Matters as weekly at 17:05. For those of you who do military and maritime times, that's 5:05 p.m. every Tuesday. We was a little off tonight, but don't watch nothing. We can catch you next time here on Love 97 FM. The purpose of our show is to highlight persons that made significant contributions to the maritime field in the Bahamas and to sensitize Bahamians of opportunities in that sector. We also cover current maritime issues from the domestic and international maritime fields. And tonight, we kind of loaded, people. We now open phone lines. If you want to call us, the number to call is 326-8255. We don't normally do it this early, but we don't care. You can call whenever you're ready because we want to hear what you have to say. Our topics for tonight leads out with sad news, people. Sad news. 4 missing men. And they are seafarers. And they are missing as a result of a vessel reportedly sunken or capsized whilst in transit from Ocean Key to Eleuthera. And the capsize happened a few miles just north of Morgan's Bluff. You know, Morgan's Bluff is the big port that we want to see the cruise ship start to visit. We want to get that all suited up and ready to go to receive cruise ships and cargo ships. Because Morgan's Bluff is in such a strategic location. It's such a low-hanging fruit when it comes to converting it to be a maritime hub outside of the city of Nassau, where the government has its one and only cruise ship terminal in this whole country. So, not to take away from the topic that we have 4 seafarers missing, and I dare say at this time, feared dead. This thing happened from the 12th of this month, just 4 days ago, people. 4 days ago. That's Friday past. Early morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, that ship took on water and started to go down and under. And from that time to this, 4 seafarers were rescued. The other 4, because it was 8 in total, including the captain, is missing. And anybody have any concrete information on any developments on this particular matter? Because I checked all the newspapers from the time and I was unable to find any story, any report on this matter in the dailies. I heard ZNS say 1 or 2 little things. So it was out there in the press to very minimum. See, we got a lot going on these days. There's a lot going on in this country and around the world. But when 4 lives are unaccounted for in an incident where a big cargo ship, I call it a big cargo ship, it's a big batch on its own power, carrying commodities from Ocean Key to Eleuthera, as I have been made to understand. That's a big deal for 4 people to go. This happened 2 o'clock in the morning, people. And when it's 2 o'clock in the morning and you're on that sea, you can't really see around you. And if your ship is sinking, that means you don't have any more power. So you just out there in the dark ocean, and I can guarantee you where they were was ocean. This is the northwestern part of the tongue of the ocean. So this deep, deep water. So it's not very difficult for a ship to sink and people to go missing or unaccounted for if they're in the middle of the ocean, eh? So I want you callers to call in. Anybody who know anything about this incident, especially the development since Friday, things that happened between Friday and now, any confirmation on anything, anybody spoke to anybody that were on board, spoke to any of the persons that did the rescue for those 4 people, anybody at Ocean Key that loaded that vessel, anybody in the Eleuthera section that was supposed to receive that vessel. Let's try and get this out. This is a maritime show, people, and on this show we want to get to the bottom of these maritime issues. Now we got to go deeper into why something like this might happen. And I ain't speculating. I talking facts. These type of things, while it's always possible, could be made very, very difficult to happen. Because in the real world of maritime, outside of the domestic Bahamas, because we ain't got no maritime being fostered or being perpetrated, no enforcement in this country to deal with maritime safety on board vessels that are non-solars, as required by the Merchant Shipping Act. And we got to go there tonight, people. We've been there before and we're going there again. Excuse me. So that is our first item, big topic item. 4 persons unaccounted for in the wake of capsized vessel off Morgan's Bluff. Second thing we want to talk about is BPL cannot supply cruise ports 60 megawatts of power needed. And you know, from in recent times, we've been talking about cruise ships all over the world being facilitated when they go in port by plugging in their power. And I mentioned once or twice, why is Nassau Harbor not doing that? But you know something? The cruise ships are going to put so much pressure on them that there wouldn't be a choice. And I think we've got to that stage now where there's no choice but to provide plug-in power for cruise. And why is it so important these days? It's so important these days, people, because the world is moving to net zero carbon emission by 2040. And the cruise ships are not going to be left behind. And because the cruise ship is a unit that moves around the oceans, it cannot set up enough power from renewable energy sources like windmills, like solar, like hydro, to be able to provide itself with enough power as it moves about. So whenever it goes in a port, and cruise ships all go into ports very often, unlike cargo ships. Some cargo ships don't go into port for weeks, especially if they're in a long ocean crossing voyage like crossing the Atlantic or the Pacific. Many weeks they would not see a port because they're moving and they have weeks before they reach their destination, and there's no stopping. They even service their engines and generators hot while they're running. This is what cruise ships have to do, what cargo ships have to do. But cruise ships, on the other hand, they don't do ocean crossing on a routine basis with passengers. They may do a repositioning voyage that calls for an ocean crossing. But these cruise ships, they want to call on ports at least every other day. They're not going to spend 2 days out to say they ain't been in a port. Otherwise, the people ain't going to want to do that cruise, Why you want to be on a ship close up all the time and you passing all these places? So because they have to go in port, what they're saying is the time spent in port can be time that we are not emitting any carbon, because we're not running any of our engines, we're not running any of our generators, because we plugged into the port that is giving us power. And why could the port give them power without running generators and engines? Because the port can set up where they can have a wind farm if you're in the northern area, where you can have a solar farm if you're in areas like the Bahamas and anywhere near within 30 within say 60 degrees, maybe not 60, maybe 40 degrees of the equator. Excuse me, because those areas would see the sun enough to have an almost constant flow of solar energy that can be trapped and stored and delivered to anywhere. Now we know that a few months back, I think it's a few short months, in a matter of weeks, I guess, it was reported in the dailies that BPL is in the process of attaining, I think, some 90 kilowatt of solar for Clifton Bay. And they go on to say they're going to acquire more solar for the Family Islands. Now this cruise port, because based on this story, and then we're going to go into some more details after our first break, but based on this story, what is being perpetrated is either the government or the port or BPL, one of those entities, is actually sending out an RFP, being request for proposal, for companies to bid on providing this 60 megawatt of power. And they seem to be defining that RFP to LNG, liquefied natural gas. So they're defining it in a way that if somebody wants to provide solar for the 90 megawatts, that ain't open for them. It's only open for somebody to provide power by way of liquefied natural gas. What kind of utter nonsense could that be? If you're going to open a request for proposal to provide 60 megawatts of power, 60 megawatts of power, it doesn't matter how the grid is fed that 60 megawatts. It should not matter. Because if you could provide 60 megawatts by way of solar much cheaper than you could provide 60 watts by way of LNG, liquefied natural gas, then why should that matter in the RFP? Why can't the RFP leave it open for anybody who could provide that 60 megawatts of power to bid? Because in my opinion, based on what I have been reading in all of my research, it's far cheaper to use that solar than it is to use liquefied natural gas. And not only that, when 2040 rolls around, if that supply is being provided by way of LNG, they will have to stop anyway and go to solar. So why are you going from, well, zero right now, well, fossil fuel, because that's what BPL uses, but BPL is not providing that 60 megawatts, eh? That 60 megawatts is going to be provided by a separate entity setting up shop to provide that. So why don't we go straight to solar and cut through the chase? Because once we provide it by solar, we don't have to worry about anything when 2040 comes around, because solar is not going to be emitting zero or any carbon emission, and we would have met the United Nations mandate. So my queries and questions to that, and we're going to go into this a little bit further, is why is it being limited to LNG? So we're going to touch, if we get the time, onto the Disney Cruise Line expanding to the Asian market. The Disney Cruise Line had their most recent ship built, and they're going to send it to do cruises, home porting in Japan. So the Japanese and other people of that region will fly into Japan to do the home porting, get on board that ship, and they will sail that region. And this is not the first one, because I think it was the Icon of the Seas, one of those big, mega, I think the largest ship in the world, Icon of the Seas, was really designed to do the Chinese home port in China and do that region. But because there was so much COVID in China, in the Chinese region around that time, they had to come to the Western world because the ship was delivered and they had to do something with it. And they were doing Caribbean cruises for the most part. So we now have Disney ramping up and expanding its cruise ship operation all the way to the Asian market by way of Japan. And I will not be surprised if other ships start to join this, because you see, you got to remember there's a lot of money in that area now. China now has a lot of money, and Chinese people, you see them all over the world traveling. Well, of course, they live all over the world too, but we see them when you go on cruise ships, when you go to big tourist sites. You always seeing these Asian people because they now get money. The Indonesians, the Filipino, well, Philippines got some money, but they're not up there with those people from Singapore, Indonesia, Malaysia, those places that they were poor, downtrodden one time ago. Now they got big bucks now. They ain't got the kind of money the American people have, but boy, they got dollars, yens. What the Chinese money name, I forget. But these people are going to get big with cruise ships because there's money in that region. And then you got a lot of people like myself and many Bahamians that would like to do cruises in those areas. Well, you know, Bahamians cruise all over the place. We don't only do Caribbean cruises. We do a lot of Mediterranean cruises. We do a lot of cruises going out of Seattle to Alaska during the summer months, because of course that's closed during the winter time. It's all ice. Cruise ships can't get up there. But many Bahamians have been doing those extended cruises. We have not been doing many cruises in the Asian area because they don't have no big time cruise ships. Well, they're starting to have them now, but we did do some. But the cruising in that area was very limited. Now we see Disney's breaking into it. RCCL was always there. Carnival was always there. So NCL, I assume, may have been there. But we're going to now see that market explode because there's money to be made. And people from all around the world would like to go on nice cruise ships in those areas because they got some very exquisite ports in that Asian area. Good food, good ports, and it shouldn't be nothing to worry about. Expect you can't speak them kind of language. But who worries about that? Everybody speaking English today. We can get around the world just speaking English, eh? Because most people know a little bit of English where they can interpret and keep you going. So we will talk about the Asian market being expanded by way of cruise ships. We want to talk about the hoodies. You know who the hoodies are? Yeah, the hoodies. And big bad of the fellas. They are the ones that are wrecking havoc in the Red Sea, eh? These are the guys that they just set up shop and boom. They're now sending a lot of drone vessels. Vessels that equipped with drone and bombs. And they only got to get near your ship and they explode and they cause trouble. But recently we saw where they went in the back of a big bulk carrier and they set off an explosion, causing the whole stern of the ship to disintegrate and the engine room becoming exposed, and that ship, all the people eventually came off and hoodies went on board and sank it. So they continue to do what they're doing. And recently they attacked another cargo ship in that area that was had some affiliation with Israel. And while that ship did not get damaged, we know that there were explosions. I think one of the vessels that they sent to it did not detonate when it was supposed to. So they got away with that one. Another one did when it got near it, but it wasn't near enough to create that impact it had when it sank that bulk carrier the other day. So we got a lot going on. We got the 4 persons unaccounted for. We got BPL. They cannot supply the 60 watt required or being requested by the cruise ship utilizing Nassau Port. We got the Disney that's now going into the Asian market, and we got a view as to the Asian market going to expand. We've got the hoodies. And last but not least, we got the two largest, well, I'm not sure they're the largest, but the aircraft carriers Dwight Eisenhower, that was in the Red Sea, really trying to put a blanket on the Houthis operating out of Yemen. Unable to do it. They did a lot of damage with all the aircraft and sonars and snipers and all the rest of that. Excuse me, going in and out of Yemen to try and catch the Houthis as they set up rocket launchers and as they send those drones out with those drone aircraft just to go on board cargo ships and create havoc. And they were actually sending them out at the aircraft carrier. So the aircraft carrier is taking head after it. But you know those aircraft carrier hull, they are so strong. If a ship run into them, the ship can bounce off. Those aircraft carriers, they don't play. But anyway, the one that is called the Dwight Eisenhower has returned home, and in its wake to replace it is the carrier Theodore Roosevelt, and that one is another large carrier that's going to be there to try and maintain presence to keep, well, I can't say a blanket, but they're going to keep taking shots at the Houthis to try and minimize the damage that those Houthis can do to ships wanting to come through the Suez Canal by way of the Red Sea, by way of the Gulf of Aden, by way of the Persian Gulf and Indian Ocean and all the rest of that those bodies of water in that area. So that's where we are. That's where we're going. So please be sure to stay tuned as we delve into these discussions on these maritime issues. You got to be warned now. We're going to be locked. We're going to be loaded with information. So please do not touch that dial. We're talking maritime, people. You're listening to Maritime Tick, 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 Tick Matters. At this point, we move to our first break, and when we return, we will engage tonight's maritime discussion.
At Bahamas Maritime Connection Limited, we offer first-class maritime security services throughout the Bahamas and the wider Caribbean. As experts in maritime security, we specialize in production of ISPS assessments and plans, verification audits, certified familiarization training, and port security consultancy, just to name a few. Our services also include provision of a security force to maintain all required ISPS facility security compliance. For all your maritime security needs, visit us today in Nassau at our East Street South location or in Freeport in the Kipling Building. Call us at 392-3515 or follow us on all social media platforms. Bahamas Maritime Connection, your leader in maritime security. Let's help you make the connection. At One-on-One Pharmacy, our friendly staff is ready to serve you. Visit us today for all your prescription and over-the-counter needs at our East Street South or Charles Saunders Highway locations. We're open Monday through Saturday from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. and from 9 to 4 on Sundays. In a rush? Send your refill scripts online at oneononepharmacy.com or ask about our convenient pickup service. One-on-One Pharmacy, providing personal health care with people at heart.
Sitting in the morning sun, I'll be sitting when the evening comes, watching the ships roll in, then I'll watch them roll away again. Yeah. I'm sitting on the dock of the bay, watching the tide roll.
Gentlemen, welcome back to Maritime. Tick, 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 tick. Matters. I am your host, Captain Glenn Payne, and I am here to run over these maritime topics. Feel free to make a call at any time. The numbers to reach us, 326-8255. Again, that's 326-8255. As we delve deeply into our 5 maritime topics for the night, starting off with the 4 persons that are accounted for in the wake of a capsized vessel off Morgan's Bluff. We want to move into why BPL cannot supply 60 megawatts of power to the Nassau cruise port, and I dare say also to our port development, because they have cargo ships coming in that got to meet the same demands and moving forward before 2040. So of course they would like to plug into it. We want to talk about the Asian market of cruise ships as Disney gets one of their newest ships to home port in Japan. We can move on to the Houthis as they continue to wreak havoc in the Red Sea by way of launching ballistic missiles, by way of sending out drone vessels with big bombs, and of course by way of sending out air drones. They're just wreaking havoc to any vessels they don't want passing through the Suez Canal or even passing the Red Sea as they line the coast of Yemen. Last but not least, we want to talk about those big aircraft carriers, the Dwight Eisenhower and the Roosevelt, that's Theodore Roosevelt, that have been replacing the Dwight Eisenhower in the Red Sea just to try and stave off the Houthis as we move forward. So again, the numbers to call 326-8255, and you can reach straight in. Our show is live, locked, kicking, and we're good to go. So let's go back to the persons accounted for. Based on my information, there was a ship, a cargo ship, well, a commodity carrier. Okay? We call it a bulk carrier, but they carry it on deck. They carry sands, they could carry salts, but of course, it wouldn't be good to carry salt on the open deck because the water could melt it. They can carry rocks, P-rocks, aragonite, whatever we want to call it, eh? But this vessel, based on the reports that I got, was loaded at Ocean Key. Excuse me. And I don't even know that Ocean Key was still operational. But obviously, based on information I'm getting, Ocean Key is still operational enough to load some ships to carry commodities around the Bahamas, eh? And leaving Ocean Key, obviously I assume they would go around South Riding Point, come up to Russell Beacon, come through Northwest Channel Light, and once they pass Northwest Channel Light, they would be in the tongue of the ocean, eh? And it would be the tongue of the ocean all the way till they reach to the southern end of Nassau. And I assume if they was going to Eleuthera, they would be passing Garland Key, coming around Clifton Pier area, all the way to the yellow and white banks, and they would be going across Ship Channel Key, and these are basic routes that all seafarers would know. You go through Ship Channel Key, you go straight across the Exuma Sound, the top of the ocean there, all the way across to either you go to Cape Elutra, or you can go south. I don't know if they go to Lighthouse Point, or they get Devil's Point, which is just, well, they got to negotiate some shallow water to get there, but there is a channel where you can just go from Cape around to Devil's Point, which is just on the outside of Rock Sound. And I know the Freeport feeder used to go there quite a bit, but because of the size and the draft, she used to catch plenty problems. Because while she's offloading all that commodity, she would be sucking in a lot of sand through all the filters and things for the generator to keep running, And you need that generator to keep running because you got moving parts on the ship that just generate up the supply. So we don't know the situation. As far as, I don't know exactly where the Elutra this vessel is going, but based on what I can establish here, it seems obvious that they just completed coming through Northwest Channel Light, and they were headed toward Garland Key, which I would have been doing if I was the captain going to Elutra, to go around Clifton Pier to keep going to Ship Channel Key by way of White and Yellow Banks. So again, the vessel capsized miles into getting into the tongue of the ocean from Northwest Light, which you've got past the Jolter's Key area, and then you would be passing north of Morgan's Bluff and coming down. And they say it was about 20-30 miles north of Morgan's Bluff. So we have an idea where it was, and if that's where it was, we know that it was in the pitch dark in the deep ocean. And this is 2 o'clock on Friday morning, which means that it's hard to get anybody to help you in that area. Now, during the daytime, you'd obviously have a lot of vessels moving up and down. It's not a very busy area, but it's busy enough so that if you need help, they would come and get to you real quick. Apparently, these 4 of the 8 crew were rescued. And they were rescued, I don't know by who, by locals, maybe local fishermen, I understand, that were in the area or that heard the call, I don't know, and they were able to rescue 4, and the other 4 are just missing in action. And I would hope and pray that they are alive, but based on the information, the little information that I have, we cannot deem them alive as yet. So why would something like this happen? And again, I want somebody to call in and give us some more information on this, because I know some of you out there know a little more than I know about this. Please, the papers ain't saying nothing, I said little something, but that's 4 lives. And I understand that there may be one Bahamian among them, so, and I don't like to speculate, but that's the information coming to me. So those of you with a little more accurate information, please call the show and let the Bahamian people know exactly what's going on with this capsized vessel. And I think we got a caller. Caller, you on Maritime Matters. Hello, thank you very much for calling.
This a question I want to ask. It's not maritime, but it puzzled me, this water meter thing going out a month. Isn't that an indication that water will be going up once they start billing you monthly?
Well, I mean, it all depends, dear caller. Thank you so much for calling. I know that ain't a maritime issue, but my understanding is that they're now going to go to monthly. They were quarterly, and they were not using digital meters. So because they're now installing digital meters, the reading can be done so much more quicker and easier. So they may want to go monthly because it takes a lot longer for the money to come in every quarter. It could be, I don't know what's the reason why they want to go monthly, but I would think that the amount of water you use in 3 months, the bill per month would be divided by 3. So it doesn't necessarily mean that the bill will go up, because if they wanted to carry it up, they can leave it at 3 months and still carry it up.
Yeah, but I think they should let us know why they're doing it and what is the story behind it. I mean, it's a modernization that they can read the meter from the office, but then they're not telling us about the financial part of it.
Well, they didn't indicate that the bill would rise, and like I'm saying, if they're only changing the meter to a digital meter, which will be easier to probably read, I don't think I don't think that should affect how much you pay every 3 months or every month, because you should divide the bill now by 3, and I think we're not fools. I mean, we could divide by 3, and we'll know if our bill going up or going down.
Yeah, but I feel like you should, when it's like this, where it's done, they should let the public know what about the financial side, because when you look at it, Bahamians are struggling. The Bahamians in the food store are begging.
I agree with you 1,000 times, but if they don't say anything about it, I won't assume, and they say that word assume is the best word to use, but I would like to assume that there will be no changes to the amount of money you spend on your water bill. Just that instead of paying once every 3 months, you pay 3 times, but 1/3 of what you would pay when you pay that once. That's what I have to assume if they don't say anything leading to it may go up or it may go down.
Okay. Well, Auntie May.
Hello! I haven't heard you for a while, my lady. Thank you so much for gracing the show with a call. It might be Maritime, but any call is a good call, darling.
Yes. That ship, Utopia of the Seas, who owns that?
The Utopia is owned by Royal Caribbean Cruise Lines.
Okay. How many times do they come into Nassau from Fort Lauderdale?
Utopia, I think they're supposed to do 2 visits per week once they get up and going.
Okay.
Because they should be doing short cruises, one for 3 days and one for 4 days, and each time they come out, they're supposed to be stopping in Nassau, and they make a second stop on their private island called what's the name of that island? The one in the Berry Islands there, Coco Key.
Coco Key. So do they have an office here? Or you have to go online to see what they're all about?
Well, I'm sure they have agents here that represent them.
Okay, you don't know the agents?
I could take a guess, but it would have to be probably United Shipping.
Okay, all right.
Could be. I'm not sure. But once you call one of the agents, I'm sure they can direct you to which one deals with Royal Caribbean ships.
Okay, and that's Royal Caribbean.
Royal Caribbean Cruise Lines.
All right. Thank you, Auntie May. Yes. I haven't forgotten you.
Yep, I haven't forgotten you either, my dear. Thank you so much for blessing the show with a call again, and you take care of yourself.
I hope she's not crying for Trump, who almost got his ass beat.
Oh no, well I don't know. I know my mommy, boy. She. I mean, God bless her soul, but boy, she didn't like that Trump guy. A lot of Bahamians don't like Trump, but we got a good handful of people, Bahamian people who love him, And yeah, all right, thank you so much for calling. Yeah, that's my good buddy. And she talked about former President Donald Trump quite a bit, and it's a big story on the assassination attempt. And a lot of my friends, and I say friends because there are a lot of people who inbox me quite a bit, they don't even believe that was an assassination attack. They think it was a setup. But I think even if it was a setup, you wouldn't have had somebody lose their life. If it was a setup, I don't think you could get the entire detail of protecting the former president to slip up the way they did. I just think that because President Ronald Reagan was the last attempt, that was in the 80s, he was the last attempt made at a president. Over a period of time, the details got less and less proficient in detection. And I mean, I'm a former military man, but I ain't getting in them kind of politics. So let's get back to Maritime as we talk about these 4 men that may be that are missing and unaccounted for, and we hope that this type of thing don't happen so much in future, because what we supposed to have going on in this country is the Bahamas Maritime Authority as the government entity responsible for ensuring that vessels operating in this country that are non-SOLAS, in other words, they don't fall under the SOLAS Convention. The IMO have the SOLAS Conventions being the biggest one, safety of life at sea. That's what SOLAS means, eh? Safety of life at sea. That convention. If the ship does not fall under that convention, there's an obligation by the Bahamas Maritime Authority to issue to those vessels local safety certificates. And that comes under section 186 of the Merchant Shipping Act, which is the act that governs enforcement of maritime in this country, particularly safety on board ships. So what I'm saying, dear listener, is if the Bahamas Maritime Authority enforces that requirement, we would know that hardly any vessel that is doing domestic trade and under 500 tons or doing trades on non-international voyages. It could be 800 tons, it could be 1,000 tons, because we got many cargo ships now that are well over 500 tons pulling up to Porter's Key on a daily basis and putting on their rum. Those are monsters. Some of those are 1,600 and 1,800 tons, gross tons. So we know that because they don't do international trade, they are non-solus. You see, a solus ship is a ship that is doing international trade. In the case of a passenger ship, doesn't matter what size it is. Once it's taking people from one country to the next, it's a solus ship. As far as cargo ships, if it's taking cargo from one country to the next and it's more than 500 tons, it's a solus ship. But if it's less than 500 tons, it is a non-solus ship. And the BMA, the Merchant Shipping Act, calls that under section 186. Any vessel that is non-solus should be issued a local safety certificate by the Bahamas Maritime Authority. And what does that mean? You see, the solus ships all have a slew of safety and pollution prevention certificates because they have to have those certificates to be able to operate between countries. Otherwise, the minute they go to another country and the port state inspector comes on board, they're going to be detained because they have no certification under solus. But if solus do not apply to them, they don't even need none. But what they need is a local safety certificate issued by the BMA. And I can tell you, based on my knowledge, not only of working with the BMA, but being around the waters for all these years, there's no such certificate issued to one vessel excuse me, by the BMA. Not one vessel received a local safety certificate because they're non-solus and they're operating domestically in the Bahamas. And you know why? Because the BMA don't want to take on the workload. Because the BMA don't think that shipping in the Bahamas is that important. Because the BMA wants to focus on international ships only. Because the BMA is headquartered in London, whereby the crux of the technical people in the BMA who can make this happen in the Bahamas are reporting to work in London. And the one or two that they have here in the Bahamas reports to that group in London and cannot make decisions on their own unless they get the authorization from that group in London. And I happen to know that, so I wish one of them call, or somebody else who knows what's going on call and say why we don't have the local safety certificate issued in the Bahamas. Because what's going to happen to issue that local safety certificate? The BMA is going to have to identify surveyors with the capacity to properly survey a small vessel and issue certificate for things like the radios on board. Issue certificate for the load line, meaning the hull and all the hatches and doors are, they're properly sealed and water don't get in, so that, that would contribute to the vessel being taken on water and whatnot. The certificate for the hull of the vessel, which ensures that the vessel is dry docked We got a call on the line. The vessel is dry docked at least once every 5 years to ensure the integrity of the steel and the underwater fittings and all the rest of that. And I dare say perhaps the reason why this vessel was probably allowed to sink. If you check the records on that vessel, and I don't know anything about that vessel, but you check the records and see when last that was dry docked. And you check the records and see when last any of our mail boats or non-source vessels operating in Bahamas was dry docked, you will be shocked. Calling on Maritime Matters. Hello.
Good afternoon, Captain Glenn.
Good afternoon to you, my dear, and thank you so much for calling Maritime Matters.
I'm calling to provide a gentle reminder to the country and all those who are listening of the vessel Diamond Express, which sank in 2018 in a similar way, where 4 persons were saved: Dawn Smith, Alan Rose, K.L. McLaughlin, who was Honduran, and Sokosi. And 2 persons were missing and are still missing as of that Sunday. One of them being one of your colleagues, Scully.
Yes, I remember that.
In a drug operation, the Defense Force out back Bajra and the civilian voters. And from that time until now, there's no organized institution or organization that allows or addresses these types of emergencies that can perhaps save lives in the future. So from then until now, we just have a repeat. Nobody did an investigation on the vessel because it was lost. It was on the way from, I think it was from Freeport to Great Harbor Key.
Mm-hmm. I remember that. I think it was going from Nassau to Freeport, but you could be right. Maybe it left Freeport and was going to Great Harbor.
I don't know. I'm just reading what the article says.
Okay. Well, if that's what the article says, then that's what it was.
Or we put something in place that matters for those who risk their lives every day transporting, cargoes or aggregate or whatever it is, before we could properly address their distress calls and maybe save lives. There has to be some type of point when organically it just has to be done.
Well, you're absolutely right. We would want to catch all or safety net so that when people make a call up for distress, there'll be some entity that can be readily available to aid them. But before I get that far, we need to know that these vessels have an opportunity to operate safely and not go 15 and 20 years without dry docking and the hull is vulnerable. We need to get a system in place based on our laws that require the BMA to issue a certificate to say this boat is safe to operate in the Bahamas.
I think you take the easy way out with the BMA. Again, the country is growing organically. The requirements that we have far exceed those that the BMA can really address at this moment in time. When we make these agreements with these private islands and these cruise ports and the cruise ships and all of that, as you advance, you have to advance your people to be able to address these things. Now, this 60-watt situation should have been addressed when they spent the $250 million to, no modern cruise with a 25-year outlook is going to build a cruise port that doesn't address it. And the irony in it is I found an article where Mike Morrow is giving, in 2022, he's giving a speech where he mentions that the future and the way forward for the cruise port is to be able to have these cruise ships be powered while in port. This was prior to during the construction of the new port. So, whether we want to or not, if we're going to stop this act, if we're going to stop putting bills on the Bahamian people that they're not expecting, because who's going to pay for this 60 watts of power that they need? Somebody has to pay for it.
Well, the reality is most of the ports worldwide are converting so that they can provide. The cruise ships will pay for the power. The thing is, they're going to pay and you're going to make money off it. This isn't something that you've given them. When they plug in, they're going to pay. The thing is, you can make, and whichever entity gets the contract to provide this 60 megawatts. And cruise ships, the reason why this is happening is because cruise ships are now required to meet zero emissions by 2040. And cruise ships realize that because we got a sail, we will reduce our emissions when we import by plugging in and utilizing the energy from the port, which could be renewable sources. And in this country, we got plenty solar. And if they were to put up a solar plant to supply Prince George Wharf by way of Arawa Key and even Paradise Island, they just put up some solar capturing and cause a network to provide that power to Prince George Wharf. Then the cruise ships will pay. See, the cruise ship almost have to pay for it now. Prior to this, and I don't think it's the port wanting to do this for the cruise ships. I think this is the cruise ships demanding that you have to put something in place to help us out. So the time now is ripe and ready.
So what you're saying is organically we've not kept up with the growth of our investors and the investments that's coming into the country. That's just exactly what you're saying, because if the cruise ship is demanding that we do it because everyone else in the world is doing it, then that is another indication that we're not keeping up with the rest of the world, and the cruise ships are far above us and also more concerned about this 2040 situation.
But this ain't no secret.
You just renovated the port. You just took it over 50% or whatever, and now you have to go back and put in these basic needs. This is something that was on the books since Mike Morrow mentioned it when he was at APD. This isn't something that, and even they don't have it. And my last comment before I hang up is, why does the power have to be built, the whatever it is that they're going to do, be built on our key? You have all of these. We have the NASA redevelopment where we're raising money for these old buildings to be, moved and so forth. You have several buildings in NASA that can be used to house its power source. So I don't think it has to be another thing crossing the water, causing an unsightly view for the guests that's coming in on the cruise ships, etc. So depending on where exactly it is they put it, it could be someplace tucked away, generating the power, like the city market land in the back there, or the theater on Shirley Street, or just try to think someplace else other than crossing up the water with the unsightly buildings that's power generating. When you have this, there's only so much space in there.
Well, you're not going to see the cable that they're going to send underwater, first of all. Second
but again,
of all,
you have the risk of someone dragging anchor on it.
You're not dealing with anybody being able to drag anchor on a cable that is running below the turning basin, because basically you're just going to run it below the turning basin, eh? Ships, if they have to drop anchor, I guess they will. But you could even send that along the shoreline. You can see, the thing is, you just need a grid setup, and you need your solar to capture and feed the grid, and then you need that thing to be sent from the grid across to and that's why I'm saying we could even use Paradise Island to feed some of it, because we could say, and solar farms are not ugly things. Solar farms, people put those things on top of the roof, and they're not ugly. They're not eyesores.
I don't know why there's no talk of solar in the RFP. They're making it saying that the solar panels costing more or causing more damage to the environment.
No, that's not true. They're not mentioning solar because probably they have an agenda that they don't want a solar company to come and set up shop, because ain't much people doing solar, but they got a solar 90 megawatts of solar supposed to be coming to Clifton Pier or coming to BPL soon. They already have the government already engaged in arrangement to make that happen. So they know that solar can do this, but for some reason they may not want to use solar up front. and it may be a political reason, and I'm not trying to get into all of that. But my thing is, the best way to do this is the way that most other ports are doing it in the region. They're using solar. So we don't need to reinvent the wheel on this. And as I say to you, when Mike Moore may have made a suggestion to feed ships with shore supply, at that time there was no demand on ships to go carbon zero by 2040. This just happened this year. They must go carbon zero by 2040. So now they have to find a way to do it. So now the ships are basically demanding that if this port ain't gonna do this, then we have to find a different port. So this is not something that the Bahamas is making happen. This is something that the Bahamas are being pressed to provide.
Right.
That's the age of how things are moving with the United Nations mandates.
Again, this is we talk about the BMA as if that's the end all. We have to remember that within an authority, we can have an authority. The BMA shouldn't be or the final scope of how we can put in the safety measures that we need to govern our state.
Well, if they're required to do it by law, they are the custodians of the Merchant Shipping Act.
They're not doing it, and they haven't done it for 35 years, so we just beating a drum.
We ain't beating no drum. We got to make them do it. If the police have an obligation to do something and they haven't done it for 1,000 years, that don't mean you don't get on them to make sure they do it now. Come on, that's the area. That's the area of responsibility.
Make a suggestion, and the suggestion is within the airport authority, there are 4 different authorities that govern various aspects of aircraft operation in the Bahamas,
and they all have their own act to go by.
Pardon me?
They all have their own act to operate under.
Exactly. So that's what I'm saying. Maritime sees more people. It hosts more people coming in. Therefore, and it also has the most deaths. So there's nobody dying in aviation, right? And they can accommodate 4 different authorities, including NASA Flight Services. There's no reason why you cannot just figure out a way to make sub-authorities under BMA, because the law says the minister may, right? So that's not, blaming them for 35 years for our inadequacies is really just...
Not our inadequacies, their inadequacies.
Well, it's ours because they belong to us, right?
Yeah, but they're the ones that are the custodians that are supposed to make it happen. We're not supposed to make it happen. They're supposed to make it happen by law. So I gotta blame them. I can't blame us. I blame us for allowing them to continue to get away with it.
Yeah, well, I just think that we need to start thinking of setting up a foundation infrastructurally that reflects the airport and the things that they do to ensure no loss of life. No, in all incidences.
Yeah, while we set that up, let's enforce what is required under the Merchant Shipping Act by the BMA. And let's get them out of London, back into Nassau, so that they could have some concern about domestic safety and pollution prevention on board ships, and stop running away from their responsibility. That's what they're doing.
Well, I think that we need to stop beating that drum.
I'm beating no drum. If they're going to beat the drum and they're not doing what they're supposed to, then they need the licks. And I will continue to lick them until they get it right. They know they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. This ain't no secret.
Ignore the fact that there's no local safety certificates being issued. The vessels are sailing into the Bahamas substandard. People are dying, and we saying, "Oh, BMA must do it." They're not doing it.
But what else are you going? So who else are you going to say need to do it?
Establish your own authority.
They're authorities now. You can't establish another Merchant Shipping Act.
That's my thoughts, anyway.
Well, I appreciate that, darling. And then you always bring balance to the equation. I don't know why you're going to defend BMA for being what they are, but I can tell you work there, I work there, and they just not doing what they should be doing when it comes to the Bahamas.
No, don't misunderstand what I'm saying. I'm not defending them. But if you've been pushing your shoulder against that same wheel all the time and it's not going anywhere, then you need to start thinking of other alternatives.
Yeah, but you have to have that wheel that other wheel in your law somewhere that you and until you do that, because you cannot see if the defense force is responsible for doing certain things, you can't blame someone else for that or say they need to form another defense force to do that. That don't make no sense.
Well, they do it because they collaborate with different agencies to assist them where they're lacking, right?
No, they don't. Defense force don't rely on nobody to help them enforce the waters when it comes to poaching, when it comes to illegal drug smuggling, when it comes to illegal fishing and illegal migrant. They don't ask nobody to help them. They gotta get it done. Ain't nobody else could help them because nobody has the authority to help them. Now, customs help, defense force help customs in certain areas, they have fisheries in certain areas, but the act provides that the defense force can lend that aid. So that's already in law.
Yeah, you just don't want to accept the fact that there are other ways that they could skin this cat.
Well, I don't have a problem with skin the cat anyway, but I know what's in law is what we need to follow, because I have no jurisdiction to say what ain't in law. I can only speak to what is in law and what is not being done.
Before there was only one civil aviation authority, and it's now become necessary due to organic growth. You can't stop that.
Maybe their laws provide for that. Maybe they amended their law. So until we amend the law, I can't say we need to do it. No, let's go with what's in the law. Now, if you're going to amend the law, and I don't know who they could give the responsibility of safety on board ships and pollution prevention on board ships to, if no other entity in the Bahamas ever know anything about it, they're the ones who do that. Who could they give that responsibility to? Nobody.
I'm saying look at development of another authority that has specific duties. You have specifically the inspection, the registration, the issuance of a local safety certificate. Every time there's a need that comes up, they create an authority. You don't see how many authorities we have bouncing around here?
Yeah, but that's the reason why they have the Bahamas Maritime Authority. They are the authority that was created for this purpose.
35 years later, we still beating that drum.
Yeah, we can beat that drum because they still ain't doing it. Okay. And people are still dying.
Well, you up enough. I go on.
People are still dying, so what? We supposed to stop beating the drum? Oh no, every time someone else die or go missing, I can beat that drum again. They will have to get it right. Well, thank you so much, Colin. And then you always add a different level of thought to our discussions. But that caller, I know her very well. She's very, very educated, very, very informed. But I don't know, for some reason, she don't think that I should be pointing out that the Bahamas Maritime Authority is falling down on their legal obligation to ensure that safety on board non-solar vessels and pollution prevention on board non-solar vessels in the Bahamas, operating in the Bahamas, are being enforced by way of the issuance of a local safety certificate that is required by the Merchant Shipping Act, which they are the custodians of. I can't get around that no other way. And I ain't trying to get around that, because while I was at the BMA, I started to do some things to make that happen. And I started to challenge the technical department, and I have documentation to support what I'm saying, because we went in great details as to how we can go about causing this local safety certificate to start to be implemented and start to be issued. But again, I only one person. And yes, I'm going to keep beating that horse or beating that drum until the BMA start to do what they're mandated to do by law. So, what is this local safety certificate going to do? And I see that we're down to minutes, but that's all right. We can be down to minutes. We can rush to another break in the next 5 minutes. But this local safety certificate, to get that, to be issued with that local safety certificate, it's very similar to what they call the Caribbean Code Certification Scheme. Vessels that want to go to the U.S. and trade between here and the Bahamas, and they're under 500 gross tons as cargo vessels, they need to get the Caribbean Code Certificate for the entire Caribbean. And that calls for a Caribbean Code Certification document that is about 10 pages long. And in that document, they have a section called Load Line, where the surveyor got to go and survey that boat to check all the the rubber around the hatches. They have to check all the glasses, the seals, the doors. They got to check the integrity of the exterior of that ship to ensure that even when you're going through rough weather and water splashing all over the place, it ain't getting inside the ship. That's what the load line is all about. They have to check that the ship don't carry or can only carry a certain amount of cargo until it reaches a certain depth in the sea. And they have something they call a plimsoll mark that they actually put in on the ship when it's being designed to say that the ship will be safe so long as it's not, this plimsoll mark is not below the waterline. And that's how they deal with that aspect of it. And then they have the aspect of radios, where you would check that they have proper VHF radios, that the batteries are there to back them up, and then they have the navigational stuff, and then they keep it a navigational record, and then they have the crewing, where you have a certificate or a document called a safe manning document, where you have a certain amount of crew required for each level, certified by the CCW code. And this means you have proper navigators on board. You have a captain who's supposed to know what he's doing. You have an engineer who's supposed to know what he's doing. And he's certified to that level. But when you go out there on these local vessels, and they have uncertified people. The person that is supposed to be doing these surveys should be a Bahamian that is qualified in the maritime sector, like myself and like many others. A lot of them, like the caller who went to Sony Maritime and became certified as a deck officer, an engineering officer. They should be the people now we're giving the authority to do surveys on, because they know all about vessels. They work on board. We got the Bahamian lady on board the Royal Caribbean who has now 2 stripes. She's halfway up to being the captain of that vessel, right? And she would obviously be the safety officer first, where you get your 3 stripes or your chief mate, and then you become staff captain and then captain. But she would have, on her way up, a lot of experience undergoing surveys where safety and pollution prevention matters, like your life raft, your lifeboats, your firefighting capacity, your ability to pump the bilge through an oily water separator and make sure it's locked when you import, and all the rest of these things. These are things that you learn while you're working on board these ships. So you will have the ability to go and survey a small vessel up to the standard, because obviously you need to have a tool that you can use when you're surveying a vessel, that the BMA would have agreed and issued for their surveyors to utilize when they're surveying these vessels. So this is not a difficult thing to do. The BMA don't have to personally survey any vessel. You got enough Bahamians who could be out there doing it. And there's no reason why at this stage of the game this should not be in place. Why audits should not be done on board those vessels for safety under the ISM code. But of course, you're utilizing a watered down version of that, because these are not solar ships. And even for security under the ISPS code, you could be doing audits on board these ships to make sure that they have some level of security on board to secure that ship or that vessel before it actually be going out to do what it has to do. So, and then I didn't intend for this show to take up all of this time on the BMA not issuing a local safety certificate to ensure that vessels in this region, vessels operating in the Bahamas, at least takes their vessel out of the sea, out of the water, at least once every 5 years, as required, and have a survey done on the bottom of the vessel. That should be a requirement before they could continue to maintain a local safety certificate. And these are the things that this local safety certificate should be doing. It should ensure dry docking, ensure certified crewing, ensure that surveys are being carried out, ensure that audits are being carried out, ensure that inspections are being carried out, and then we know that the vessels out there, if they don't have this certificate, they should be stopped, placed before the courts and charged. If they have this certificate, we shouldn't have those boats sinking because of negligence and maintenance and that type of thing. And that is where we're going with this. Yes, it may be a little technical, and I'm so sorry for those who don't want to get too much technical stuff on Maritime Matters. But Maritime Matters is a maritime show, and maritime in itself is a technical area. So, Michael also mentioned our second topic, that BPL cannot supply the 60 megawatt of power needed for the Nassau cruise port. And it's not for the port, It's for those cruise ships. You see, because of the entire, and all of you there know, the heat that we are getting, our temperatures are so much higher. And even when the temperature is not that much higher, the air is so hotter, so much hotter than it used to be. Just recent years ago, you can't really move around in the heat like you could always move around in the heat without drenching in sweat and feeling dehydrated and feeling weak and all the rest of that. Today the heat is actually causing problems worldwide. This global warming thing is real. And it's because of the emission of carbon in the environment. It's because of the ship's engine throwing out all that carbon. The ship generator throwing out all that carbon. The plane engines throwing out all that carbon. The car exhaust throwing out all that carbon. The BPL big generators throwing up all that carbon. It's because of these machinery, these engines that has to use carbon-filled fuels and coal and all the other things that are full of carbon to be able to cause that combustion. It's because of that the earth now has too much carbon in the environment, and the carbon is creating a blockage because they absorb the heat and sits, and they don't go into to space like they should, right? The heat ain't going into space because the carbon creates a blockage, and it's trapping the heat and keeping it between the layer of carbon and the earth itself. So when the next day comes and the sun heats up the earth and that tries to rise, the carbon is blocking that. So the heat's staying on earth. And we all know that it's now feeling a lot hotter than it used to be. Not only in the summer, but even in the winter time, we have hot days. All because of what we know is global warming. And to reverse that, we need the ships, the aircraft, the automobiles, and everything else to stop emitting carbon. And that's why the United Nations made a decision earlier this year. And they got all member countries unanimously, while it was difficult, because they were set in the Persian Gulf who making up all that money, like Kuwait and Iraq and Iran and them, and Russia. They don't want to stop selling fuel to people and making all that money. So they want it to go carbon zero, because they wouldn't be able to sell that anymore. But they don't have a choice, because as people start to move to alternative energy, like wind farms in the northern countries, right? Because they don't get enough sun on a year-round basis to give enough energy to keep them going the way they're going now. So they're using wind farms, which will give them more than enough. Solar in the heated areas, like, once you're within 40 degrees of the equator, you can use solar year-round. And solar is going to eventually be responsible for over 40% of the power generated worldwide. So it wouldn't be no more engines, because the other 40-50% would be wind farms. And right now, 10% is being provided by nuclear powers, by nuclear plants, like the one in Japan when they had the tsunami hit, and they were so scared because they know if that got shifted and disrupted, that nuclear could get out and escape and kill up a bunch of people. So they're also using nuclear energy to provide power to power plants worldwide, but that's only 10%, eh? So right now, fossil fuel is providing probably about 80%. Because as of last year, 2023, based on research that I did, solar provided only 5% of global energy. And they expect by the year 2040, solar will be providing 40%. So from 5% to 40% is a very seismic shift. And so we know, like I was saying, even if Nassau Cruiseport was to utilize LNG, liquefied natural gas, initially to supply those cruise ships when they import with power, they're going to have to shift it again to solar eventually, because even that plant would not, once 2040 come, be able to emit carbon into the air, because liquefied natural gas still gives off about 40% of what the other fossil fuels give out. So you're still putting a lot of carbon in the air, maybe only half the amount you would have normally put. But why don't you go for the zero one time and use solar? That's what I'm asking. So ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to Maritime Matters. I'm your host, Captain Glenn Bain. We're getting a little technical, a little detailed with the solar, a little detailed with the capsized vessel, and the fact that the Merchant Shipping Act requires a local safety certificate to be issued by the BMA is not being issued. And hopefully that'll happen soon enough. I'm not going to stop until they do something. I don't care. They ain't got like me. I like them if they don't like me. But I am concerned about lives. I am concerned about safety at sea. And we need to lick this until they do something, eh? I want somebody come on board and let me know we need to keep licking it. And not just people coming on and say, oh, we killing the horse. No, I ain't killing the horse. He putting the licks where it need to go. So with that, we move to our second break. And please keep online as we return and talk a little about the Asian market and Disney, the hoodies. I don't know if we can get to Eisenhower and Roosevelt, but we'll see how far we go. This is Maritime Matters. Thank you.
At Bahamas Maritime Connection Limited, we offer first-class maritime security services throughout the Bahamas and the wider Caribbean. As experts in maritime security, we specialize in production of ISPS assessments and plans, verification audits, certified familiarization training, and port security consultancy, just to name a few. Our services also include provision of a security force to maintain all required ISPS facility security compliance. For all your maritime security needs, visit us today in Nassau at our East Street South location or in Freeport in the Kipling Building. Call us at 392-3515 or follow us on all social media platforms. Bahamas Maritime Connection, your leader in maritime security. Let's help you make the connection. At One-on-One Pharmacy, our friendly staff is ready to serve you. Visit us today for all your prescription and over-the-counter needs at our East Street South or Charles Saunders Highway locations. We're open Monday through Saturday from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. and from 9 to 4 on Sundays. In a rush? Send your refill scripts online at oneononepharmacy.com or ask about our convenient pickup service. One-on-One Pharmacy, providing personal health care with people at heart.
Sitting here resting my bones, and this loneliness won't leave me alone. This 2,000 miles I roam just to make this drop my home.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Maritime Matters. I am your host, Captain Glenn Bain. We're having ourselves some fun up in here tonight. Boy, we got what, 10 minutes left? Okay, 7. My goodness. I tell you, this funny how time flies when you're having fun. So, the numbers to call if you want to on this conversation is 326-8255. That's our special number to call if you want to be a part of this discussion. And please do feel free. Standing by for your call. But so far we've been covering the capsized vessel where 4 people are still unaccounted for. It's a barge moving from, I think they said, Ocean Key, trying to get to Eleuthera somewhere. And they were off Morgan's Bluff, just coming through the Northwest Light Channel there. And they capsized. 4 men were rescued. The other 4 are still at large. We don't know. I don't have any information from the dailies. I don't have any information from any other person saying what development, if they found these men, they didn't find these men. So we got to leave that where it is. And this situation, like the others, the Rec Commission called for the BMA to introduce or implement the local safety certificate that's required under the Merchant Shipping Act, Section 186. BPL says that they cannot supply the cruise port with the 60 megawatt of power the cruise ships require. And to that end, we're going to leave that alone. I'm saying that we need the request for proposal to say that any entity that can provide that 60 megawatts, because obviously if you're providing the power, the cruise ships could pay for it, and you got a close shop deal. I don't know why BPL don't just bring in some extra power to deal with just that, because whatever you charge, they got to pay. You basically setting up shop based on what's out there. These cruise ships ain't fool. They know what's out there. We got a call on line 1. Thank you so much. Caller, you on Maritime Matters. Hello.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Captain Bean, how do you do, sir?
Top shape and getting better, my friend. How are you?
Good. Yeah. Captain Bean, I've been listening very intently to the issues you've raised. Those issues are of paramount public importance. And it is shocking that people in the government will not support you. I cannot believe that people in the government, and I know they are listening to your show, they should be supporting everything that you say. When I heard what you talk about the local safety certificate,
yes, sir.
People drowning in the sea, no accountability, no prosecution. These are matters of urgent public importance, and the government has a constitutional duty to investigate and prosecute if necessary.
You are absolutely right, my friend. Absolutely.
And the number one issue that you should never lose focus of is dereliction of duty. This is the most important issue at law, dereliction of duty. When people take an oath to support the Constitution and laws of a country, that is an oath they took, and they could be prosecuted for violating their oath of duty to protect life, liberty, property. These are fundamental rights enshrined in the law in every country on the planet. So when dereliction of duty occurs on matters of constitutional proportion, the only solution, they should be prosecuted for dereliction of duty. That's why we have the appropriate mechanisms in place to ensure that there is no dereliction of duty. Not in the Bahamas, not in the United States, no place. These people are not above the law. They are paid huge salaries to perform a duty to the public. When they become negligent in discharging such a duty, the crime of dereliction of duty is clear. And the issues that you raise, especially today, as well as in the past, and I've been listening to all your shows, just waiting for the government to support you and do something. They listen to your show. Why are they so silent?
I agree with you 1,000%.
And that's an indication that could be a crime. Just hearing what's being said, knowing that the laws have been violated, dereliction of duty, and they are silent, the big question is why? They should be compelled to answer these questions. They should be compelled to investigate these important issues, and you are keep bringing them to the attention of the public every week.
Yes, sir.
And why are they not doing anything? This is disgraceful. This is absolutely shocking, and I believe that these complaints should get to King Charles, because under Article 71 of the Bahamas Constitution, King Charles is the chief executive officer of the Bahamas.
That is correct.
And the Governor General is the one representative
of the
King Charles.
That's correct.
So that means King Charles is the number one authority. The Governor General is number two. And the Cabinet is number three.
Absolutely.
We should have the Governor General and King Charles. They should be made aware of these serious issues that are being neglected by the government, because the serious crimes of dereliction of duty is clear. And when you speak, you are speaking as an authority. And those words that you speak should never, ever be swept under the rug. When they are swept under the rug, dereliction of duty is clear. These people have a duty to protect life, liberty, and property, in particular life. And when they can see these serious crimes and people getting drowned, murdered on the seas and in our country, they're not doing their job. Dereliction of duty. King Charles and the Governor General should be urgently notified and interfere to make sure that the constitutional laws of our country are enforced. I've done my part, and you are doing your part, and there are others who are doing their part. But the government, totally silent. The question, why? Answer, dereliction of duty. My name is Harry Alfonso Boleg, and let me tell you one thing, Captain. I'm never afraid. I don't fear man. As the wisest man that ever lived was King Solomon. King Solomon said, you don't fear man, you fear God. You keep God's 10 commandments. This is the duty of man. Now, that's the wisest man that ever lived.
That's right.
And what Solomon said is consistent with the 10 commandments of God and the creator of the universe, which is God, in Genesis chapter 1 to 2, verse 3. I am mixing the Bible because the Bible is the foundation of all knowledge.
Absolutely.
Nothing in life is done without the Bible. And when our officials, not only in the Bahamas, but especially in America, because I have residential permanent status in the Bahamas and in America, so I could speak of the corruption, the dereliction of duty that exists in the Bahamas and in the United States. I can speak with absolute certainty, and I could back it up with facts, and I can back it up with law, just like you can.
Yes, sir.
So why should people like us be ignored? Why should people like us not be enjoined by other members of the media, by the government? Why? That's the question.
That's the question.
Dereliction of duty. Thank you very much, Captain. Keep up the works and let no man stop you from doing that which God calls you to do and which is authorized under the laws of our country. Again, thank you. Have a good day.
I thank you so much, Mr. Boleg. Thank you so much for that call.
Take care, sir.
Thank you, sir. Yes, that ends our show, ladies and gentlemen. And I can tell you, I really wish I could have taken that up a little further, because you know, when the Sea Hall and the United Star had that collision and a few people died while they were, I think the Sea Hall was going on an excursion to Cat Island, and the United Star was coming across from somewhere, from Cat Island, I think, and they crashed in the middle. They had a collision, and the crane of the United Star fell on top of one or two of the patrons, the guests on board. And out of that came a wreck commission. And out of that wreck commission, there was the biggest recommendation that the local safety certificate should be issued to non-soulless vessels. And that was That was what, back in 2002, 2003? And do you know that that was just put on the shelf and still sitting on the shelf catching dust? And every time there's an event, I keep bringing up this local safety certificate because that could stop so much of these things from happening and save so much lives. Anyway, we're fresh out of time. I say to you, dear listener, thank you so much for continuing to listen to Maritime Matters. I thank my 3 callers. I thought we were not going to get any mails tonight, but we got a mail in the end. And he was so impactful. So ladies and gentlemen, with that, my good producer, Mr. Kishno Jones, I thank him for keeping us on cue. I thank my sponsors, that would be Bahamas Maritime Connection Limited, and also Island Care Pharmacy in Freeport, and in Nassau One-on-One Pharmacy for keeping this show going. With that, as always, I say good night to my good old Annie Mae, and Maritime Matters. Tick, 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 tick. Out!
I've had nothing to live for. Look like nothing's gonna come my way. So I'm just gonna sit on the dock of the bay, watching the tide.